Today we're going to be crocheting this very simple crochet Christmas stocking using our single crochet braided stitch and our chevron stitch. And for our stocking, I am working with the Lily Sugar and Cream size 4 cotton yarn. And I am using the white and the red in bulk. And I'm also going to be using the jute, but I could not find this in the 14 ounces, so I just grabbed the 4 ounce instead. And for the brim of our stocking, I do have a precursor video for you, and that is my how to crochet a chevron brim like this. And for that precursor video, I want you to make 2 different brims, each with 25 of our chevron stitches. So I have already created both of those here, and as you can see, I have joined one, but not the second one. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to join the second one, and you can apply that to both. And once you have your 25 chevron stitches in place, then go ahead and place your row of single crochets, and that should put your crochet hook on the opposite side of your starting tail. So now we're going to fold this in half so that the ugly side is facing out. And if you haven't already, then go ahead and place 1 chain at the end of your last row as a turning chain. And all we're going to do is slip stitch into these corresponding stitches going across our row. So to do that, insert your crochet hook in the last stitch from your first row, right here. And we're going to insert our crochet hook in the last stitch from our last row. From here, we're going to yarn over and drop all the loops on our crochet hook for a slip stitch. And we're just going to repeat this process going up our row, working underneath both loops in each stitch. And if this is the first chevron brim, then you can go ahead and cut and tie off your yarn when you get to the end of the row. But if this is your second one, then we're going to go ahead and connect this to the first one. So before we connect these, make sure they're both folded so that the ugly side is facing out. So all tails should be right here where our crochet hook is. So we're going to begin by placing a slip stitch right here, right before our starting and ending tails for our first brim. So from here, we are going to join these 2 edges using single crochet stitches. So you can place these single crochet stitches wherever you would like to join your 2 edges, as long as the 2 edges are aligned. And what I mean by that is that you line up these stitches like this. So you can see here that we sort of have 2 loops and then a vertical loop, 2 loops and then a vertical loop. Try to line up these vertical loops as you're joining your edge, and the closer that you can get to lining these up perfectly, the better your brim is going to look. And it doesn't matter how many single crochet stitches you need to place to join this, as long as you join it fully. So I usually try to work in these sets of 2 loops, but that does create sort of a very loose single crochet stitch, if you will. So feel free to add additional single crochet stitches if you would like. As long as you're lining your stitches up, it shouldn't matter. So go ahead and join your 2 edges, and I will meet back up with you at the end of the row. And once you're done joining your 2 edges, it should look something like this. So from here, we're just going to cut and tie off our yarn. So next, working with our tan yarn, we are going to attach the yarn to our crochet hook using a slip knot. And then we're going to begin to create a really long chain rope. So I usually crochet about 50 chains at a time, give or take. And once you're done placing your chains, what I want you to do is pull your loop out nice and long like this. And what this does is it allows you to reinsert your crochet hook and pull on your working yarn to add additional chains. So now go back to the very first chain stitch that you made, and we are going to slide our crochet hook in that stitch. From here, we are going to skip 34 chains, and then we're going to insert our crochet hook in the 35th chain. So now we're going to yarn over with our next color and pull through these loops on our crochet hook. I'm going to go ahead and tie my two tails together a few times. So make sure that your stocking is turned inside out, and you want to pick whichever side is the ugliest, which for me is this side. And so I usually start right here where my seam is, and I'm just going to insert my crochet hook in any of the available loops. So for this pattern, we are going to be working over our chain rope, and so that's going to give it that nice braided look. So all you have to do is just line your chain rope up with these loops to work over it, and you're just going to treat it like it's part of your stitch. So we've already inserted our crochet hook in this first set of loops, so we're just going to place our single crochet over our chain rope, just like that. And sometimes it's helpful to give your chain rope a little pull because it can bunch up. So for this row, we are going to place 44 single crochets going all the way around the edge of the brim of our stocking. And so you can use stitch markers to mark maybe the halfway point and try to get 22 on both sides, or you can just sort of eyeball it. And so sometimes you might need to be placing 2 single crochets in one set of loops if you're working it that way. And when you get to the end of your row, you should have a total of 44 single crochets. And make sure you're still turned inside out. We will be working this entire pattern this way, so just keep that in mind. So from here, make sure you draw your chain rope so that it is in front of your chain loop right here and all those tails, because that's going to be the visible part. So from here, we're just going to dive right into our first single crochet from the last row, and we're going to place a single crochet. So this should be a seamless flow pattern, which means we won't have to worry about starting and stopping our individual rows. Instead, this is going to act like a big spiral. So from here, all we have to do is place 1 single crochet in each stitch in each of our rows and just allow the pattern to flow seamlessly. And we're going to repeat this until we have roughly 17 rows of our single crochet braided stitch. And once you have your 17 rows of your single crochet braided stitch, end your last row so that your crochet hook is on the opposite side of your chain loop over here. And it helps to lay this down flat and really make sure that you've centered this. It'll just make your stocking look better if you do. For this next part, I recommend grabbing a scrap piece of yarn or a stitch marker. So for this row, we're going to place 1 single crochet in each stitch in our row, except for our next stitch right here. In this stitch, we're going to place 5 single crochets. And you want to make sure you mark that center or third stitch of the 5 stitches. So in order to do that, I usually place my first 4 single crochets, mark the third stitch, and then add an additional single crochet. Once you have your 5 single crochets in place, then you're just going to place 1 single crochet in the remaining stitches in your row until you get back to your stitch marker. And when you get to the end of your row, you're just going to repeat your process of placing 5 single crochets in that stitch that you marked. And again, you want to mark the third stitch of the 5. And we're going to repeat this pattern for a total of 5 rows. And each row should increase by 4 stitches, so at the end of your last row, you should have a total of 64 single crochets. And once you've repeated that pattern for your 5 rows, your stocking should look something like this. And from here, you can remove your stitch marker And all we're going to do is place a few rows of just placing one single crochet in each stitch in our row. And you're going to repeat this for a total of 9 rows, so I will meet back up with you there. After placing your 9 rows of your single crochet stitch, your boot should look something like this. And for this next part, you're going to want to grab that stitch marker again. And before we begin, I want you to make sure that you've ended your last row to where your crochet hook is on the same side as your chain loop right here. And the pattern for this row is going to be to place one single crochet in our first 6 stitches, and then we want to single crochet together our 7th and our 8th stitch. And we're going to mark the first stitch of each of our rows for this portion. So I recommend placing the first 2 stitches of your row and then going back and marking that first stitch. So go ahead and place your first 6 stitches and I'll show you how to single crochet your 2 stitches together. And once you have your first 6 single crochets in place, then I want you to insert your crochet hook in your 7th stitch and yarn over and pull up through. Then insert your crochet hook in your 8th stitch and yarn over and pull up through. You should have 3 loops on your crochet hook, so we're just going to yarn over and drop all 3 loops. And that's how we're going to single crochet 2 stitches together for this pattern. So go ahead and repeat that pattern going all the way around your row until you get back to your stitch marker. And when you get to the end of your row, you should have a total of 54 single crochets. And the pattern for our next row is going to be to place one single crochet in our first 5 stitches, and then we're going to single crochet together our 6th and our 7th stitch. And don't forget to mark that first stitch in your row. And after repeating that pattern going around, you should have a total of 48 single crochets. And when you get to the end of your next row, go ahead and remove your stitch marker, and we're going to pull out any additional chains from our chain rope. When you have one little loop sticking out, insert your crochet hook in that loop. And we're going to yarn over and drop both loops on our crochet hook. Before we fully close up the hole in the bottom, I really want you to make sure that your crochet hook is lined up perfectly with your chain loop here. See, mine's a little bit off, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place a slip stitch in each of the stitches until I can get right on that fold. So you really just want to try to get your crochet hook as close to this point as you can. And so once you have centered this stitch on that point, then all we're going to do is slip stitch these corresponding stitches together. So basically just going back in the stitch you just made and then going in this other stitch right here sort of corresponding with it. And the best part about this is it does not have to be perfect. So you're just going to yarn over and drop all the loops on your crochet hook for your slip stitch. And if you're working in slip stitches, it might be a little tight. So now go ahead and repeat this going down your row until you've completely sealed up the hole in the bottom of your stocking. And when you're done sealing up the bottom of your stocking, we are going to cut and tie off both strands of yarn. And after turning your stocking right side out, it should look something like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful, awesome day. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to check the links in the description because I will link to my other crochet videos, including my other crochet Christmas videos. I hope you have a wonderful and safe holiday season.